Action figures are a thing of joy. Except these action figures. These are freaking nightmare fuel, okay? These are the scariest action figures ever made for kids. Now, of course, we're not going to count things like, NECA making hard toys and the stuff today. Everything horror has been made into a toy. But what fascinates me about these toys is that they were made for kids. They were made in the 80s and 90s. And the idea that, a kid should play with this thing. And so these are some weirdly creepy things made for kids in the 80s and 90s. Number 15, we have the Manglord. Now, what makes the Manglord creepy is, of course, that this is a line of toys where you could rip them apart and put their body back together. Now, in general, just Manglord is creepy looking. He looks like some sort of zombie. He actually looks like, you've seen Creepshow, shit that like crawls out of the ocean at the end of Creepshow to come murder this guy. That's what Manglord looks like, and he is creepy. And I had a Manglord. I really loved it. I thought it for about 3 days. Well, what makes Manglord so creepy is the idea is that you pull apart Manglord and you put them back together. But if you have Manglord for more than like 2 days, first of all, his limbs don't go back together. And by then, he's going to be covered in like dust, dirt, leftover potato chips, pubic hairs, hairs from the floor. I don't know why the pubic hair. Just covered in just disgusting shit that he gets stuck to. And then he's basically doesn't even come back together. That's what makes him scary, okay? It's not intended to be scary. He is terrifying because he's collected the general scum and hair of everybody in your family, rolled it up into a little ball for you to play with. That is terrifying. Okay, now, are most of these things actually scary? Do they scare me now? Maybe towards the end of the list here, we're gonna get the stuff that bugs me as a human being. But we gotta get back in the hand of a little kid, right? You get a little kid, you get a toy, you bring this toy back, and it's creepy, it's gross, it's something that just disturbs you. If you're interested in learning about why and what triggers us to be scared of things, check out my video here I made on my other channel where I talk about storytelling, where I talk about the things that scare us and why. Okay, really good Halloween video for you. And like and subscribe and hit that. I'm sorry, I gotta do it. I apologize. Okay, next in line, and this one bothered me a little bit. Gotta admit, it's a little creepy. Found him creepy as a kid, and so this memory here, and this is Snakeface. Okay, Snakeface is one of the Snake Men from He-Man. He's kind of goofy looking in retrospect, but as a kid, I just thought he was really cool and really creepy. He's got snakes coming out of his eyes and his mouth. That's absolutely terrifying. First of all, I hate snakes. Press a little button on his lever on his back, and all of a sudden, his eyes come out, and he's got the scariest of the Snake Men, the scariest of He-Man and his people. Now, you could say there's some creepy stuff in He-Man. Should Skeletor be on this list? No, and here's why I'm not going to put Skeletor on the list. He's creepy in concept, and the idea of a skull face is creepy. But then you put him on a really jacked, like every He-Man character has a jacked muscle builder body, and is basically kind of bare-chested underneath, or wearing like a really like super tight leotard. And I'm not scared of anybody who wears a super tight leotard. I mean, I should be. I think it kick my ass, obviously, but I don't find them scary. Okay. So Snakeface doesn't have that leotard body, and so he retains terror for me. I think he's creepy. Next in line, Real Ghostbusters. Had to have something on this list, of course. Most things in the Real Ghostbusters are not scary in any way, of course. They're just supposed to be scary, but would you find them scary? Probably not. One thing I do find scary, and there's a very specific reason, and admittedly right off the bat, not scary, but when you think about it, kind of terrifying, okay? Granny Ghost. First of all, she's this nice old lady. She's a nice old lady. She's your neighbor. And then all of a sudden, flips open in a kind of body-hard David Cronenberg shit. The front half of her body flips open and becomes a mouth, okay? And then her eyes get real creepy. She's got these, like, teeth fangs now. Okay, it's kind of kitschy. It's kind of fun. This is what sells me on it being actually kind of creepy. When her mouth opens, It basically looks like she's exposed her insides, and we have like a bloody, gory mass open in her chest. It's some David Cronenberg shit, I argue, if seen in a context of real life, would be really scary. If your grandma came over and all of a sudden her body opened up, it's some Thing shit. It's like, this is a Thing. That's what this reminds me of. This is John Carpenter's The Thing, and Granny, your grandmother, she's become the Thing. Her freaking chest opens up and a mouth comes out. Freaking scary. Okay, next in line we have, and I was a big fan of this toy. Love this toy. Love Rambo and the Force of Freedom. I was just a big fan of Rambo in general. I'd seen all the movies because parents back then didn't care, and you saw R-rated shit when you weren't supposed to. You can check out, I made a video about R-rated action figures. You can check that out here. And this is a guy called Snakebite, okay? What I love about Snakebite, what makes him creepy, a couple things make him creepy. First of all, look at that package art. It is beautiful. And not only is it beautiful, but it really recalls, if you're a horror fan, the sort of Cannibal Holocaust painted covers from that era. But what I love about Snakebite is, this is a guy, instead of weapons, what he's got on his back is he's got a glass case in which he keeps tarantulas, venomous snakes, and rats. Okay, what is absolutely terrifying to think about it, what are you doing with a rat other than sticking up somebody's ass? Like, I mean, that's basically what is he doing with a rat? Is he like gnawing up? The idea that he has a rat, it's not his pet rat. This is just like a thing he uses to fuck people up with. Snakebite scares me. Okay, he scares me. Okay, I don't know. I don't remember this. Didn't have any of these. I'm not a huge sports guy. These are called Sports Freaks. Okay, there's some creepy ones. There's one that looks like a cow who plays football. I don't know why a cow would play football, but I'm just gonna this guy is nightmare fuel. Okay, just throwing this out there. This is called Pine Tarpe, and this is why he scares me. First of all, he's got a horrific, zombified face. His tongue is out, and he's apparently a baseball player. Okay, this is now why he is wearing what appears to be a diaper and no pants. I don't know what's going on here, but that guy is a molester action figure, and he's gonna terrorize your little league kid, and he's wearing a diaper. You put two and two together and tell me that is not nightmare fuel. Okay, next in line we have, this is from a line of action figures called Swamp Thing, which is a DC Comics character, and had a couple of movies that the kids shouldn't see because they're full of boobs. They're just constantly full of boobs. It also had a cartoon that I don't remember at all. Most of the Swamp Thing is horror themed. These are all horror themed characters, but most of them honestly aren't very scary and very creepy at all. The exception here I'm going to give you is Dr. Deemo, okay? Dr. Deemo looks like an absolutely terrifying sort of zombie-like character. He looks like a voodoo guy, okay? So he's a voodoo guy, and he comes with this little figure that is on a noose, right? It looks like he's hanging this little creature. It's almost like it looks like Swamp Thing or some sort of voodoo doll. And he's got pure white eyes, and he is really creepy and kind of awesome. Very short-lived, action figure line. Okay, next in line, we have characters from Spiral Zone. Now, Spiral Zone is absolutely a horror idea. So if you kind of vaguely remember Spiral Zone or is a huge Spiral Zone fan, what Spiral Zone is basically there's this zones that have been created by this evil mastermind. And in the zone, if you live in the zone, you are turned into a kind of zombie, basically. You don't really have control over yourself. There's these machines that are creating the spiral zones, which turn people into zombies. So the villain characters in Spiral Zone are horror characters. They're all monsters, but some of them are really absolutely, I love Spiral Zone, but some of these are absolutely terrifying looking. Look at this guy here. This guy's name is Bandit. Look at his eyes. They're absolutely terrifying. He's completely wide-eyed, almost seems to have no eyelids. He's got this bizarre, they all have this orange matter coming around, which is an indicator that you are, infected by the Spiral Zone. So these are essentially zombie characters, and some of them are absolutely quite scary looking. So, and I really think Spiral Zone would have been a really great canon film kind of the Canon Films made these weird pseudo horror action movies like Cyborg and things like that. And this Spiral Zone always felt like one of those to me. Like it really worked really well as that kind of movie, the sort of cheap, gritty, grindhouse type action movie from the 80s. That's where it really like feels Spiral Zone is, and those are horror characters. Next in line, we have something that is accidentally terrifying, and this is the Infaceables. Now, the Infaceables are the very short-lived line of toys, pretty fun. I had a couple of them, and basically what would happen is you would press a little lever on their back, and they had a face that would get sort of sucked in by this mechanism. And so they had like a thin like rubber piece that would get sucked in. They would have like a second face essentially underneath it, a shape of the face. What makes them really terrifying now is that almost all of them, you can't find one of these things that is still in good condition, because that little thin rubbery piece has rotted over time. And so now they look absolutely terrifying. But what's really creepy about the Infaceables, they're given a sort of horror theme, but I don't think they're necessarily that scary. What's scary is they almost look like, an actress that has just had way too much plastic surgery, right? Like that like look. And then, that it's really creepy. They basically all look like Meg Ryan. I don't. I'm sorry, Meg Ryan. I guess maybe I shouldn't talk about that shit. Next, we have Beetlejuice, and of course, Beetlejuice is trying to be scary. And in general, they're not. They're not going to be scary. However, one figure bothers me a little bit and just a little bit disturbing. And if you were a kid and you got a Beetlejuice action figure, it might bother you a little bit. And this is an action figure that is, he's skewered with all kinds like a shish kebab, right? So you basically have your Beetlejuice action figure and you just stick him with pins that have various different meats on them. And he does have this garish, horrific face. Now, knowing it's Beetlejuice, would he scare me? No. Would he be creepy? Because the movie's very funny and it's very... But if you just like drop that shit off in my lap and I didn't know anything about it, I would be like, get that shit out of my face as a kid. I'd be like, nope, get it out, get it away, throw it out, return to the store.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice!
Yahoo! It's showtime!
Okay, next in line we have from Clash of the Titans, Calibos. This is a great figure. I had all of the Clash of the Titans figures. I was really into the movie because it was the first time I'd seen boobs. I don't know if you remember that, but there was boobs in Clash of the Titans and butts. I know I sound like a 10-year-old right now, okay? I'm saying I was like 8 years old and I saw, and you see Andromeda and you see boobs and butts. And you're like, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, so I like Clash of the Titans. Calibos was the villain of Clash of the Titans, and he is doomed by he's a goddess from pissing off the gods. He's turned into sort of demon-like creature. He basically is a devil, and he's got a hooved foot and a tail and these claw hands, this really creepy looking face. He gets his hand cut off, and he gets like this cool little fork on his hand that unfortunately the action figure doesn't have. It's like pre-fork hand. He'd have been much better if he had the fork hand. I would have been like one of my favorites. But anyway, very creepy looking, very disturbing looking action figure. Okay, next in line, we're going to give this to one of the most iconic villains in all of action figure lore. And this, unlike what I talked about before with Skeletor didn't quite make the cut because Skeletor just got this weird bodybuilder body that just makes him not scary. Mumm-Ra is absolutely terrifying. This action figure is so creepy looking. What makes him even creepier than Mumm-Ra himself? Mumm-Ra, of course, the character is a very scary character. He's a mummy that turns into this massively jacked, very frightening, demon wizard with all kinds of powers. He's pretty awesome, and he's a great villain, great villain character. But what makes the Mumm-Ra action figure way scarier than the Mumm-Ra of the cartoon is that he looks kind of shitty. Like, that's the thing. It was like Thundercats, they're not the greatest action figures. I love the Thundercats, but they just like, they don't represent very well the cartoon. They don't look like the cartoon. And he looks kind of wrong, right? There's just something wrong about him. It's like, I think what's funny about like this action figure If you compare them of like the Mondo as a Mumm-Ra action figure, that looks amazing. It was just like the cartoon. The human mind's ability to perceive a human face is so incredible that if something is very close to human, but not quite, it makes us absolutely repulsed by it. And this is what this thing does to me. It just looks absolutely terrifying and repulsive because it doesn't look real. It's kind of bad. And yet, and terrifying. Just like if that thing was 6 feet tall and you put that in a Halloween display, I would run from that shit. I would hit it with an axe. I would be like, no, it's really creepy. Plus, it had a little light up feature where you stuck the thing in its back and the eyes lit up, and it is really nightmare fuel. I think the Mumm-Ra action figure is nightmare fuel. I loved that thing as a kid so much. It was such a cool action figure. Next in line, we have Max FX and this Freddy Krueger. Of course, who doesn't want a Freddy Krueger action figure? Now, what's great is this was a toy line that failed mostly because the toy company pulled it before it even had a chance, because there was a big reaction against having a Freddy Krueger action figure because Freddy Krueger is a child murderer. Okay, or an accused. He's a child murderer. Having a action figure of a child murderer for kids is not a great idea. However, what was great about this Max FX, it's one of the most fascinating aspects of 80s action figure culture is that this Max FX was supposed to be a series, and there was going to be many of them. There was going to be one that would have an alien suit. There was going to be one that had like a werewolf suit. He was this makeup effects artist who had a power that he could actually take on the powers of the thing that he was dressing up as. So imagine that, a superhero who could go out and have the powers of Alien, the powers of Freddy Krueger. What a cool idea. It would have been awesome. Give him some villains, give him a whole line. Would have been one of the best things ever. Unfortunately, parents complained, and so we didn't get this. But this is a Freddy Krueger action figure, basically, for kids in the 80s. What a weird idea. What I think creeps me out most about it is, like, if you look at Max himself, he's just the most generic dude you've ever seen. He's just like, looks like your neighbor that you would, he just whatever. And he dresses up like Freddy. Awesome little curiosity of action figure history that unfortunately never became a thing. Somebody make it a thing now. One of these companies, like, make it a thing.
Lights, camera, action. There's a man called Max. He's in the special effects. Special effects. Hey, Fred, thought you were dead. Put your face on, Jason. Special effects. Special effects.
Okay, next in line, we have one of the scariest action. This is where we start to bother me a little bit. This is where I start to be like, oh, that's actually creepy. I do not like that. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like it. Okay. And this is Bloodstone. And this comes from Rocks and Bugs and Things, which is an obscure action figure line that was basically made up of creatures that were either rocks or bugs or things. And their thing was that they had action features, which they would have like a hidden feature. So if it's a rock, you press a little lever and then it would open up and reveal that it actually was a creature. So they would eat these things called mortals, which were these little creatures. And that was the whole story, was that, they would just eat the mortals. That was the point. There's a company producing mortals right now, but not producing the Rocks and Bugs and Things. Some of these are really cool, very, very interesting, very fun. But there's one of them that is absolutely terrifying, and his name is Bloodstone. You open up Bloodstone's, you press the little button, and Bloodstone opens up, and he is like a vampire, just pure white eyes, rows of teeth, and a tongue that would just come out. And he's got these arms, and he would grab a mortal and just suck him up. And he is just the thing of nightmare. I love this thing. I need me a Bloodstone. Anyway, that's Rocks and Bugs and Things. Look at that face. Imagine that. Imagine seeing that face as a kid. That is absolute nightmare fuel. Okay, next in line, if Mumm-Ra was scary, and he was even scarier than Mumm-Ra, is Mongore. This is a Satan action figure marketed to kids in the 80s. I can't believe they got away with it. That thing is pure Satan. This is the era of Dungeons and Dragons, fear, where I was a Dungeons and Dragons fan, and people were complaining, and parents were complaining that Dungeons and Dragons was a doorway to Satan. How the hell is Mongore not a doorway to Satan? I think he is. You play with Mongore, he is absolutely pure Satan. And, he's a fire-breathing thing that feeds on your fear. That's the idea of Mongore. But he's got a Sith. I mean, he's just like, and he is just pure evil. I think that is just one of the creepiest toys ever made. And the number one thing, the creepiest action figure though ever made, has to be the Big Chap Alien, which is one of my prized possessions. I had a Big Chap Alien. This is me with my Big Chap Alien, one of my prized photos. And I loved it so much. It was my little buddy. But what was great about the Big Chap Alien, what made him such a pure horror item, is that he had a lot of hard edges. He was sharp, and he would hurt you a little bit. If you played with him, I was trying to hug him, because it was, he's like my little buddy. But he was sharp, and he would hurt. And you could press his little lever on the back of his head, and that little mini mouth would come out. He is just absolutely creepy. And he looks pretty great. He's a pretty great version of the alien, and which is just bizarre. I think the Kenner was just like lost and thinking, well, Star Wars worked, why not Alien? But Alien is nightmare fuel. No kid should watch Alien. It's absolutely terrifying. Terrifying to this day. Alien is terrifying. But he had these claw hands. I mean, he was sharp and creepy and scary, and he hurt. But, for kids.
For kids.
That's my take on the scariest action figures made for kids. So what am I missing? What's on the list? What should have been on this list? And if you're interested in more horror talk, because it is that time of year, check out my scariest G.I. Joe action figures of all time video right here.